have enough for everybody. We didn't know there were going to be so many people here. On one side of the leaflet is this map of the world. It's the world at 5 degrees temperature. Now then, you probably know this, but if we go past the tipping point of 2 degrees, you cannot stop the world migrating to 5 degrees because you release all the methane, everything kicks in, and you get what's called feedback. It augments in a kind of chain reaction and builds and builds. You can't stop it. Now then, so if you draw a line parallel with Paris round the whole globe, below that it's uninhabitable. On the back of the leaflet, it talks about the rotten financial system that caused the climate change. And maybe I'll talk about that, but you must read it. And if you haven't got a leaflet, you can look it up on our website, Climate Revolution, and it's called The Rotten Financial System. And so you just type that in, and then you'll see. But I'll just be quite brief. Maybe I can just tell you quickly what it is. The central banks, there are 147 of them. And the Federal Bank is one, the Bank of England is one. They are privately owned. The Bank of England is privately owned. And they print money. They're allowed to print money. And they print money only in an emergency, because what they really want is the interest. They live off the interest. This is why they never really want the principal paid back. They just want the interest. This is why you got that subprime mortgage thing in America, and it's what happens. This is why they actually own countries. They own a third world country who've been sort of forced to borrow money, and all they can do is sell off all their assets in order to pay the interest. And meanwhile, this debt that they owe, they can never pay it back. And so it actually, the country is actually owned by the central bank. Anyway, so that's the way it works. It's really, really evil. It causes poverty. And so what happens is, even it causes climate change as well, but I'll explain. But even if you forget climate change, it is the most terrible, terrible system, because it causes poverty, and the poor get poorer and poorer, and the rich get fewer. And so the logic of this, if you take it to its logical conclusion, is that it ends in total poverty, because people will be there'll be no market left to sell to, will there? Everybody will be either too poor or dead. So it's the most terrible, terrible system. And this is what the politicians serve. It's done by the monopolies who wreck the planet. And the politicians help the monopolies, and they help the central banks. And so, yeah, coughing, okay. Anyway, so I'm very easily distracted. You better all cough now. But anyway, so where am I? Because I have to, if I get distracted, I have to talk about being distracted. I'm sorry. Anyway, so yeah, so that's our financial system, and we have to be ever so careful of this TTIP. That's the next thing that we have to really, really attack and stop. You probably know what it is. I have only just discovered what it is, and it's incredible that we don't know what it is, because it's being done in secret. And NAFTA is actually the same as TTIP, North American free trade agreement with us, yeah? And so NAFTA is, I'm going to sit down now, it's the coughing, I can't help it. The people don't usually cough when I talk, I don't know why not. Anyway, sorry, it's going to keep on going, isn't it? Anyway, so NAFTA, yeah, what that is about, it employs something of a thing that that countries sign up to, and it's called investment state dispute settlement. And what it means is that if a government gives a company a contract to mine or to do something in that country, then the company that's doing the mining has got more rights than the country that gave them the contract, because you cannot stop them earning their living. You cannot take the bread out of their mouth, these great companies. They're treated just as if they're a person. And so if they happen to poison your water and you want to sue them, well, then you're not allowed to sue them, because they've got the right to poison your water, because nobody can stop them from doing what they've been contracted to be allowed to do. And so, and in fact, what happens, there's ever so many examples of this. They sue. If the country said, no, sorry, we're not giving any more contracts now and we're terminating what you've got, you can't continue to poison the water, then they would say, oh, well, I'm sorry, but we'll take you to court and we will now fine you for trying to stop us from it. So they can fine them £1 billion, whatever it is. It's done in the corporation's own courts. And so what we've got throughout the world with human rights, with everything, is that popular opinion is completely ignored and the laws are changed to serve the interests of the few people who control the world. And I just leave that all at that, but you've got to stop teaching. There's massive opposition to it at the moment. And people don't demonstrate very much, but there's not much else we can do. We've kind of got to demonstrate. Anyway, so I'm going to just try and jump in somewhere else now. Which is, why don't we know? Why don't we all, just say we're all going to have to do something? Why don't people even talk about it? Why don't people know about it? And it is mass propaganda, organized lying, and it is the press. And they just repeat what the politicians tell you, and then their biggest propaganda weapon is non-stop distraction. But the biggest lie of all is the constant pretense that nothing's changed, that everything's the same. And if you keep hearing that all the time, then you're not going to worry, are you? You're going to just think, well, the migrants, somebody's going to deal with it. You don't realize to yourself, well, this is the beginning of the end. You don't realize. And so what I'm saying to you is really, really mad, because we're in ultimate danger of mass extinction. And we're actually not even really talking about it. Of course, you get 1 or 2 articles in the paper. I'm very extreme. Nobody, even the activists, don't stand in front of you and say, we face mass extinction, because they say, oh, no, we can't do that. We'll worry people. They won't listen to us or whatever. It's absolutely crazy that this is the truth. Anyway, so, Anyway, so what do we do about it? Well, I don't know. We just have to keep fighting the government at every level, whatever we can do. There aren't enough of us. I said already that governments don't listen to opinion. They ignore it. Once they're voted in, they do what they want, and nobody can stop them. And they're totally complacent and arrogant about that. They're not interested in whether you go and protest. I mean, at the time of Tony Blair, there were 2 million people who were against going into that war in Vietnam, in Iraq, and they were all in London. There were 2 million people in Hyde Park, and the government ignored them. And I think, my colleague here, Teddy, is just reminding me that that's exactly what Machiavelli said. What did he say, Teddy? Tell me again. That he's what? Tony Blair said, we're not here to be led, but to be lead. But what did Machiavelli say? That he supported the interests of... Yeah. Yeah. So there are the people who, the politicians, they do believe that they know what's best for people. They actually believe that. They believe their own brainwashing. They believe that. And I don't know if you ever read Noam Chomsky, but he goes back in history to explain where this started. Just a few men who thought that they must, in fact, engineer and promote a plutocracy, because only those people would know what's good for everybody. And they call the public the herd. The herd, they were first of all called the beast, the wild beast. They were worried. But when propaganda began to really bite, then they felt much more complacent, and they called us, I include myself in this, the herd, animals that could be manipulated and controlled. Anyway, so we're in this situation. Where do I go from there? What I want to say is, what can you do about it? There's a big demonstration happening on the 29th of November in London. We hope it's big. We hope 1 million people come. If it rains, I don't know what will happen. But I think, I don't know, they're expecting 100,000 at least. I really don't know, but because people don't demonstrate too much anymore. We could discuss why they don't demonstrate anymore. It's very interesting because people are more aware than they used to be, and yet they don't demonstrate. But I won't go into it. It's something as well to do with the social media and people communicating in a different way. Anyway, so there's a very big demonstration. It's called the People's March for Climate Justice and Jobs. And I interpret that, it's against austerity, it's against TTIP, and I interpret it as a green economy. We need a green economy because climate justice, if you did try to have climate justice, the result, it would have to be a green economy. The only way you're going to get climate justice is to have a green economy. Governments are completely against this. They're not supporting. In this country, it's terrible. Anyway, and if we had a green economy, we would have jobs for everybody who wanted to work, because we would have different values. We'd have more school teachers, probably less bankers. Probably we wouldn't pay football players the amount of money they get. We might pay cleaners more money. We would have just proper pay for people according to their value. It would not be a communist society. It would be a free society, but it would not have free market capitalism. It would not have that. The free market causes competition, and we have a war economy, and that's linked completely to competition as well. I'll just speak about the war economy in relation to the whole rest of it, which is that wars are fought for cheap labour. At one time, they were fought for slaves. Cheap labour, markets, natural resources. And of course, those resources are finite, and that's why we've got climate change. We've got a terrible economy whose base is war. Anyway, so that's that. Now then, there's this march, and that is leading up to, it's the day before or the same day as this summit meeting in Paris called COP21. Anyway, and it's being hosted by France. And there's a very, very good man with a program approved of by the French government. And it's an alternative demand and an alternative agenda. Rather, it's a more concrete agenda, asking for real things to happen, not just talk. Anyway, so I'm going to be there. And so there are real demands that we can ask for. And honestly, it's got to continue. It can't just stop. It's got to be the beginning of a process which changes the whole world economy. And I think that France should continue to host this discussion and these demands. Anyway, and so one of the most, we've got a website, we've got what's it called? NGO, a non-government organisation, and we've got a website, and it's called Climate Revolution. And one of the aims of Climate Revolution, oh, by the way, I'll tell you how I started Climate Revolution with my friend Cynthia. And it was because we read an article by James Lovelock, who invented the Gaia Theory. And I would like to talk about the Gaia Theory, to just tell you what it is, but we'll see. Anyway, and he said that he guessed, by the end of this century, there would only be 1 billion people left. He didn't think we could do anything about it because he thought we were too stupid. Anyway, and at that point, Cynthia and I decided, what can we do? And the first thing we did is we discovered a most amazing charity called Cool Earth that had a budget and a plan to save the rainforest, the total equatorial forest, Papua New Guinea, Congo, Amazon, all three, the most important forest machine in the world in the equator. And the price, the budget is £120 million. I mean, that is absolutely nothing. They just sold a Modigliani for £100 million. You know, it's not so much money compared to the trillions that are just poured away all the time. Anyway, printed and poured away. Well, can we please ask them to print some money and give it to the rainforest? Whatever. I mean, if we don't save the rainforest, then forget it. And also, if we don't save the Arctic, forget it. We've got to do it. Now then, and so we work a lot with NGOs, and that's why I was on the tank. Somebody's just asking me about it. My son Joe has got an NGO, and it concentrates mostly on trying to oppose and combat fracking. And I work quite a lot with Greenpeace as well. We've done good things with Greenpeace. And lots of others. Anyway, so the best and most wonderful contact I had recently was Paul Watson. Paul Watson began Greenpeace at the same time. He was a co-founder of Greenpeace. And he split off from Greenpeace because he was actually even more extreme, you know, standing in front of the harpoon and not letting them kill the whales. And he's not scared of anything. He was on a ship, marooned for 17 months in international waters because he's wanted, first of all by the Japanese and by Interpol, because he's been stopping people from killing the whales and protecting endangered species and catching illegal fishermen. And his organisation, they've got more ships than Greenpeace, and they're called Sea Shepherd. And he's got political asylum in France at the moment. He lives in Paris. And so he's very engaged in trying to get this thing in the beginning of December, this meeting of people who are going to try to save the world. And I met him because he's a mate of Pamela Anderson. you know, Pamela's a friend of mine, and she's all into animal rights, so her biggest hero is Paul Watson. Anyway, and I said to him, Paul, is there any chance? Okay. Okay. Okay, you have to sit down, yeah. Can we, to save the world? Okay. And he said, every chance, all we have to do is regenerate the sea. And he explained to me, and I thought that big fish eat little fish, and that we start with the bacteria and the plankton and the krill, and then it moves up the chain. And he said, not a bit of it. It's the whales' shit, and it's also the fact that they go right to the bottom of the sea and they bring back all the iron and the nitrogen. And so the more predators in the sea, actually the more fish in the sea. And so the whale and the plankton and everything are a complete cycle. It's not that there's no start to it, it's a cycle. And this is what happens with biodiversity. You've got to stop taking pictures now. I can't, that's it, thank you. No, really. Yeah. I can only do one thing at once, pose for a picture or talk, sorry. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so, right, so, yeah, and so he said to me, the sea gives us 80% of everything we need, 80% of the oxygen, sequesters 80% of the carbon dioxide, and it also cleans up all our waste, except at the moment it can only deal with 50% of that waste because we're wasting too much. But it just shows that if you did regenerate the sea, you would be able to save the planet. And he said that every creature on this earth gives and takes in this cycle except us. We're the only ones that simply take. Now then, so the whole way out of our difficulties is a green planet. What's good for the earth, what's good is good for the economy, and what's good for the economy and the planet, it's good for people. We've got to mirror the world. We've got to live in a world that we represent and are part of. We've got to do that. I want to talk about culture because what I'm specially here for is to say, I had a friend and he said to me he was very, very intellectual, and I would not be the person I am if I had not met him. He was Gary. And so he died about 5 years ago. He was older than me. He was wonderful. And he said that the world suffers from the isolation of intellectuals. And I think that that's the case today as well. And I'm assuming that here is a community of people who are interested in intellectual things. And so I wondered if we couldn't have the voice of the intellectuals coming from here and also linked to other groups of intellectuals throughout the world. Now then, I read a book, Brunelleschi's Dome, about Brunelleschi and the cathedral in Florence. And I'm just going to sit here for a minute. Oh no, it's too much of a sinking in chair. Anyway, so, and definitely in Florence, when all those wonderful architectural buildings were done, and the great, great artists lived there, amazing people there. And there were definitely more intellectuals per capita than there are. It was one of those times when nearly everybody seemed to be, half of them seemed to be intellectuals. they had guilds as well, which supported, the finest and everything. So it's a lot to do as well with your applied arts, your things that you actually use, your cups and your plates and everything, as well as your paintings. Anyway, so, right, and so the isolation of intellectuals. Now then, let me just think, because I'm going to give you my idea of culture, because art gives culture, and intellectuals are engaged in something we call culture also. Now, so this is something I read in Matthew Arnold's Culture and Anarchy. I'm not going to say who Matthew Arnold was. He was the son of Arnold of Rugby, and he was, anyway, he was who he was. And he said, this is his definition, culture is the pursuit, because I don't think we've got culture, I think we've had consumption, and I think this is a big problem. One is the enemy of the other. Anyway, so, right, and so his definition of culture was, culture is the pursuit of our perfection by means of getting to know everything that has been said and thought in the world, and through this knowledge, casting a stream of free and fresh thought upon all our stock notions and habits. And what that means, obviously, is that if we understand the past, especially through art, we know the world, we can mirror the world, and we can look to the future, and we can criticize the world we live in on the level of, is something good in the world now that's better than it used to be? Is something worse in the world than it used to be? What can we learn from the past? And don't ever let's forget that the world has forgotten more than it knows. There's no such thing as progress in art. There's only possible progress in the art of living. Anyway, so I believe that this is true. And I want to mention also Matthew Arnold. He talks a lot in his book about the will of God. And what he means by that is the way God sees things and would want things. And we are, sorry, I'm just coughing, sorry. And we are, where am I? Now, yeah, I don't have any religious belief, but I adore, really honor, adore the concept of God, that God is a model of our perfection. And to me, this is an idea of human evolution, that we can evolve into better human beings than we are by becoming closer to that perfection. And so Matthew Arnold talks about art, and that's how I see us following our in the pursuit of our perfection, that we become, we evolve into our true human genius. When I say genius, I'm talking about genus. We are a species, and our genius is that we can do certain things that other animals can't do. And we're sometimes called homo faber, and we can make things. I don't think there's many animals, there's birds who can make nests, but we can make a lot of things. And by that fact, even people say this is, and so I think we can mirror the world through art. And some people say, well, we can make all these things, so the Eiffel Tower is art. That's what we do with our hands. That's who we are with our hands and our brains. We can make things. homo artificer or whatever. We are, making these things, but no, because when you think about it, I'll tell you how you get there to think about it properly. The Greeks, Aristotle, they called art imitation. It means you copy something, you represent something, and it's an imitation. But he preferred the word imitation to representation because imitation means it's not real. So men, human beings, can make something. No other animal can do this. We can make something that's not real. And by this, we understand the world. Everything we know is an abstract, a sign, a signal. Animals do this, but they actually don't make this mirror of the world out of it. And so that's what art is, and that's what we can do. And that's what we're not really doing. But there's one very, very important addition I need to make to this. Aristotle said we should imitate the world as it ought to be. Now then, if you think of art today, you might say, well, that mirrors the world, but it's a downward transcendence. It's a whole load of rubbish. So it just reflects the fact that we're rubbish if you say that is relevant, that it's got relevance today. I completely think it's just a total fake thing, and it's part of consumption. Anyway, so I think that we have to have a better world, and we have to save this one. And I wonder, and so I'm just thinking, how can we do that? And would you want to do that? Because I think you have to have discussions, and you have to include in your discussions, not just there and then, but you have to have a network of intellectual people, your tutors, the people who come to visit and give talks to you, or the people whose books you're reading. All these people you need to link with. And I've thought of a way that you could do it, and if you can find a better way, well, very good. But I write a diary every month, and it's about fashion. It's about what I do, so it includes fashion. But it's very much to do with what I think and what I read and what I see. And so it's about intellectual things as well. And it's about politics, and it's about the environment, and it's heretical. You don't get that point of view, well, much, I don't know where it is except in what I say. And I did get it very much from my friend Gary. He really pointed me away from all the catch the latest thing, keep up with the times, all that stuff. That art is perfect, it's always original, it's perfect, and therefore it cannot progress. And all art is original. I'm just going to art in a minute as well for a moment, because just take painting. Every painting is an imitation of the world at that time. I haven't quite gone into it enough to say that everything we know about the world is an abstract. I did say this, but I want to enforce the point that we only know, we're part of the flux. We're all moving in the flux. We never stand still. What art is about, it's timeless. We actually stop time. If whatever we learn, if we do some mathematics, we stop time because we're dealing with symbols, not the actual, baskets of oranges and things that we're calculating, whatever it is. And so that's what we do. I've lost my train of thought slightly, but I think I was nearly there. Art is always original, and it's a representation, but it's an imitation of the world. And everything we know, all our knowledge comes from that. God knows why. Little electrical charges. I've got a wonderful example of how we do know things. And I could tell it to you if there's time in a moment. But, right, so what I think we could do is if you would read that diary, just half a dozen people, to maintain a core, and then you can discuss it. And it may be that you don't discuss the diary. Maybe it triggers some ideas that you yourselves have got that you want to discuss. But I want to find, you've got to find a focus where you can come together on a regular basis and find out also what needs to be done in the world and what can be done. And I do think that we should have, you know, we the intellectuals of Britain, you know, want this. And we the intellectuals of Britain say, you know, we're against this and we should be doing that. Whatever it is, I really think that you have to have this platform. And then, of course, you can join us in the marches and everything. My colleague Cindy is here. She's been working with a lot of young focus groups to get them to come and demonstrate and join in what we do. And she went recently to talk to the students in, what's it called? St. Martin's Art College, because a very clever journalist came and talked to us, and we said to her, hey, Clemmy, how about you starting this little cell, this nucleus of engaged people, you know, to try to do something about the world. So I just want, Cindy's here, and maybe she could talk to somebody who said, yes, come back, we'll start and have a look at Vivienne's next diary together, and then we'll go from there. Maybe, I really don't want to sound like some sort of megalomaniac, but I am a heretic. And so I do think it's worth reading, and as a start, some of the stuff I write. I think it will start to give you a view you didn't have before. Right, so I think that's it, except I could just tell you about knowledge, what knowledge is. And it is to do with signals and signs and everything. But maybe I won't. Maybe I've talked enough. Okay, all right, thank you. Anyway, thank you for that. But the point is, it's very urgent that we try to do something. We are the last generation that has a chance to do something, and it's up to us. And so I don't know if I'm too much in the mood for taking any questions and stuff. I don't really know. And because I've been talking about the environment, and I know you wanted to ask me things about fashion, but I don't really know. Anyway, so I think we can just take, I will just take 2 questions, and then we'll stop, and it can be about anything you like, okay? All right, yeah, if there is anything. So, Sachin, yes. If you can just tell me if anybody wants to ask anything or comment. You know, it would be good to say, yes, I'm up for it, we got to do something, you know, I don't know. No, okay, I don't mind.
So Vivienne is very kindly agreed to take 2 questions. You can raise your hand. Yes, lady at the back.
How much longer have we got, Sachin? 30 minutes. 30? 13, okay.
Hello, Ms. Westwood. Thank you very much for your really inspiring speech. I had a question about what you said, saying that mainly bankers, politicians, and...
About what, sorry?
How mainly bankers, politicians, and journalists are part of the problem, and how probably a lot of the people sitting in this room will go on into those professions. Did you have anything specific you wanted to say to them, how they could be part of the solution as well?
Yeah. Well, the problem is the world we live in. It's very, very difficult. Competition, you know, I mean, I just heard an interview of somebody interviewing bankers, and most of them apparently don't really want to sell all the things that they know are not going to benefit people, like CO2 heavy, investment, and even things that sell people pensions and things that they know that they're sort of tricking them and things like that. They don't want to do it, but they do it because of competition. If they don't do it, somebody else will do it, and it's their job. It's like, it's the same thing. I mean, if you were in the Nazi situation, what would you do? Would you actually, if somebody told that you shoot your friend, would you do it? Because you think, well, if I don't, somebody else will do it, and I'll do it myself. I really don't know. I've thought about that. I saw that on the television. Something like that happened once, that somebody was given that choice. And I've thought about it ever since, and I wouldn't. I would have to accept whatever it was. I would not do it. But whether it would be bad for my friend or bad for me, we might both be tortured horribly, whatever. I've gone through all these things. I really don't know. So we have to change the world we live in. And this is very much what this COP21, according to the Alternative Commission that's going to try to do something, will do. I brought this little booklet with me. I didn't read it out. It's not really to do with your question, but Paul Watson, what is in there is really, really concrete things we have to change. We have to, for example, one concrete thing, if you wanted to regenerate the seas, would be you have to stop subsidising commercial fishing. It's very simple, things like that. We have to get there, and you have to try and help us to get there. So I'm saying try now, but of course, there will be more and more green jobs and things you can do. And as a journalist, I think the really important thing for a journalist is to tell the truth and not put themselves first. Most journalists are about promoting how funny they are, or how sarcastic they are, or how many words they know that nobody else knows, or whatever. I mean, it's just, and so a person who really wants to interview people and tell what they say is very good, but I think you have to see things in the context of the people's problems. And so, and if you happen to be pro-people and against the manipulation and destruction of everything, then somehow you have to sort of try and get that through. And I do think that every person who is an art lover is also a freedom fighter. We need a better world. We need culture. And without judges, there is no art. You have to have good judges. We must have rotten judges at the moment. And so, you have to cultivate your human genius. And so there's a lot you can be doing, and the results of it in the job, just try to see that somehow or other, you've got something to offer, Thank you.
We have time for one more question. Anyone from here? Yes, gentleman at the back.
I'll carry on for the 13 minutes, I don't mind.
Hi, Vivienne. You've said in the past that the art school at Harrow, where you tried to learn silversmithing, you found to be really exclusory. So I was wondering, is that okay? Can you hear me?
I'm a bit deaf. He's going to have to
Absolutely.
repeat this for me, but go on, carry on. Yeah.
The art school in Harrow, originally when you tried to learn silversmithing,
Yes.
you've said in the past that you found really exclusory. So I was just wondering about how you thought that might reflect in Cambridge as well. Is there an issue which you think in Cambridge reflects that, and how can we change that ourselves?
Sorry, Sachin,
You
yeah.
said that
Harrow Art School,
yes,
yeah,
he said that
Silversmith.
you found that quite exclusionary. And
Quite what?
exclusionary.
Oh, I see. Okay, all right.
And then he went on to ask whether, how do you think that applies to Cambridge, and whether you think there's an issue of that in Cambridge, and whether that should be changed.
Well, it's a new word for me, exclusionary, and that's why I perhaps didn't understand. But my situation in Harrow was not how you describe. It was that I was very working class. In those days, you could get a job just like that all the time. I wanted to earn my living anyway, and just get on with it and go dancing and all this stuff. And and buy clothes and just, have a good time. But I was very good at art. And so, although I'd never, at that time, I knew there were paintings. I didn't even know there were art galleries. I actually did know. That's not quite right, because just before I moved to London at 17 with my family, I was told that there was an art gallery in Manchester, and I did go. But I didn't know these things. I'd never looked at a sketch or how to draw or anything. I was trying to sort of draw photographically all the time, being really careful. And I didn't know the idea that somehow, art is about the transmission from brain to hand, and you've just got to, it's your spirit that's going to do that work for you, not just this meticulousness. So, but I was very good at being able to copy things. And so I went to Harrow Art School, and I went to the fashion class for it was a foundation course. I'm just taking a bit longer because I've got a little bit longer. But so every Friday we did fashion. And I was so fed up and so bored. I had to keep drawing all these things instead of being able to make something. She wouldn't let us make anything. So I joined the silversmith thing and started making myself some rings and stuff. Anyway, the thing is that after a term, I thought, I'm not going to be able to earn my living here. How can I be an artist? How do you actually earn your money being an artist? I didn't know. And so what I did, it's just showing you how silly I was and how, I came from the countryside and I didn't know what was going on in the world. And I could very easily, when we were on the tube from Harrow going, first of all, we went to the Victoria and Albert Museum once a week to sketch. And I looked on the train at advertisements for a secretarial school called Pitman's. You could learn to be a shorthand typist. And I thought, well, I'd better do that. But I'll have to save up some money to do it. If I'd have known what was going on, I could just have easily have gone to the head of the art school and said, could I transfer to the technical college, please, and learn it? But I didn't even know that. And so I thought, well, I'd better go and get a job and pay, and then I can go to be a shorthand typist. And so that's what I did. And I went to work in the Kodak factory for a year, just undoing the mail and processing the requests for copies of photographs. And then, whilst I was there, I realized that I needed something more to do with, I needed to employ my brain more somehow. And so what I did is I went to teacher training college. And I thought, well, I'll take art as my main subject, and I'll see if I can find out how you could be an artist there. But if I don't, I can always be a teacher. So, of course, I left the school. I got a diploma for my work there, and I could have taught in an art school even. But I didn't. I just got the first job that came along, which was school teacher in an infant school. So it wasn't that I thought that the place was exclusive. I just didn't understand, And so it would have depended on the teacher. He should, if I bothered to speak to one of the teachers about it, they might have said, look, you just hold on in there. It doesn't matter. how you're going to do it. You can learn an awful lot from here, and, you know, you just stay with it. And maybe that would have been fine, you know, I just don't know. So it was not exclusive. Now then, do I think that some people are more privileged than others, and that the people here have got a situation here that by luck they've got, that therefore excludes other people who didn't have that luck? Well, yes, it could be, but that's not your fault, is it? I mean, and you've got to make the best of it, and noblesse oblige kind of attitude. You know, you've got to earn, you know, you've got to pay for your good fortune by trying to make the world a better place. That's it.